Hello, my little Liebfrau Milches. Welcome to the Friday edition of Moohead Radio. I'm your host, a big and furry bovine. Getting furrier because I haven't gotten out of the house to get a haircut. But hey, that's my life, and you don't want to hear about it. However, for the next however many minutes I fucking feel like talking about it, we'll be talking about Northeast Ohio sports and from the perspective of Cleveland sports fans. Not the national bullshit that you're getting 24/7. That's all and just all over ESPN. And I'll tell you, we'll talk about some of that a little bit later in the show. Obviously, we have, the fact that the Tribe made a trade. We have to address that. And that's one of the things that I wanted to do. I don't know that I'm going to have any guests on the show today, so that I can keep this show nice and concise and be able to give you my assessment of the Indians trade and to also go over a few other things. Well, my hopes and dreams are shattered as Brian enters. No, I'm kidding. How you doing, Brian?
I'm all right.
Yeah, that would probably, well, it's your pain that's talking.
Well, not yet.
Believe me.
I got doxxed by an asshole, so
you got what?
Doxxed.
What's that mean?
He posted actual personal information and family information inside of a group.
About you?
Yes.
Oh, that's really bad form. Really bad form. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, if I were as insensitive as that and I could, tell the world that you were, a gay consciousness counselor, I mean, I could really ruin. Oops. I'm sorry, Brian. I'm sorry. No, he's not a gay consciousness counselor. I'd be more like
a gay conscientious objector or something.
Well, they like it better when you fight against it. No, we're not going to do this.
Well, hell, I just got into an argument with an alt-right guy. I said, dude, you can't call Whoopi Goldberg a porch monkey.
No, you really can't do that.
Look bad.
Well, I mean, look, the fact of the matter is,
he told me to go suck her weenie.
Yeah, and again, that's just because Whoopi kind of lost her cool. And, look at it from this perspective. People who have a very tenuous grip on themselves, it doesn't matter what their political beliefs are. If Whoopi Goldberg is part of the new left and Roseanne Barr is part of the new right, I mean, you saw Roseanne's video. I mean, she's mentally ill. I don't care. I don't really care what religion she is. I don't care what political affiliation she has. She is one sick person. And Whoopi Goldberg's obviously got an anger management issue at the very least. You don't go, screaming.
Well, she's a total fucking moron. So that's,
She's a comedian who had some success years ago in movies. I mean, the fact of the matter is not everybody can transition from being a movie.
Yeah, apparently she still thinks she's on the plantation.
Now, I mean, look, the way that
give her a call and tell her the movie's over.
I mean, some people can really make the adjustment, and other people, to being a political commentator, and other people just better off leaving it alone. I see Bronk is joining us also. Moose and Squirrel. We will see what we talk about this program, my friend.
We will see. It might get interesting.
This accent comes back now. You remember who this originally was, don't you, Bronk?
Oh, Mr. Chudzinski.
Rob Chudzinski.
Yes. I couldn't remember his first name, though.
Now it might as well be Donald Trump.
No,
we're getting closer and closer to Russia all the time. And that's like what I need is Russia up my ass. That's what I need to make me feel a whole hell of a lot better. Here's the deal. The Indians made a trade.
Wish you voted for Mitt Romney, doesn't it?
Mittens. I love
Hey,
Mittens.
He's the one that said, hey, Russia is our biggest adversary.
Yeah. Yeah, well.
And your boy shot him down.
Ally now. The Indians made a trade, and I am all in favor of the trade they made, except I'm not. And here's the deal. I mean, and everybody is saying, look, you got a two-time All-Star relief pitcher that you needed, and you got a guy who's an awkward right-handed sidearm thrower that you need in that bullpen, who was doing well in his rookie season. And, you know, you got to give up something to get something. And I get all that. I understand why they did it, because they really, you know, they had to. They got no bullpen. But what bothers me about this trade more than anything else is that we end up with, again, the black and white view on social media of how could we have given up Mejia? And then the other side that says, how could you even care about Mejia? We got a two-time All-Star. And what they're ignoring is the fact that we're talking about 6th and 7th inning pitchers. We're not talking about closers. We're not even talking about setup men. We're talking about 80 pitch a season, 80 innings pitched a season pitchers, guys who get us into the 6th, 7th inning. If the starting pitcher fails, they get you through the 6th to the 7th to hand it over to the setup guy and then to the closer. That's what we're talking about here. And my question is a simple one. Cody Allen has been closing for the Cleveland Indians for how many years now, Bronk? You can look that up.
At least 3 or 4.
Yeah, and he was with the Indians. I think he first made his first appearance I'm thinking 2013 or 2014 with the Indians. All right. So he's probably been around for about 5 years. And, you know, Brian Shaw had the tenure before that as our setup man for many years. Many years. So much so that he had so many appearances that his arm fell off.
Cody Allen was pitched 70 innings in 2013. He first joined the Tribe in 2012. So,
okay, so really 5 years that he's been, and then he's been a closer, I think, for 4 years. All right. And he's likely to be gone, predicated on his contract.
5 years he's been a closer. 2014.
Now, you tell me, how is it possible? Who was setting him up for the closing and all that time?
I think Joe Smith did a fair bit of it, you know, Mr. Allie LaForce.
Yeah, and I think Joe Smith for a little while was doing it, and then Brian Shaw was doing it. And that was right. And both of those guys came from trades, okay?
Andrew Miller in the playoffs?
Yeah, 2016. But yeah, we're trying to go back a little bit, give some history to the people.
Right, some historical perspective. My question is this. Who were our 6th and 7th inning pitchers during the years here recently where the Indians have done pretty well?
Well, you'd be doing well to remember them because...
Well, Joe Smith was one of them.
Joe Smith was one of them. You know, you got people like Rich Hill and C.C. Lee and, you know, Scott Barnes and Matt Albers and Pestano and Bart...
And Pestano is a good example of somebody who came to us and who did well and then lost it very quickly, which pitchers can do. My point is going to become even more salient as
Nick Hagedorn, man. Nick Hagedorn.
Yeah.
Like some sort of drug recovery program type thing. You know?
Right. I mean, these are the guys who were our 6th and 7th inning pitchers. How many successful 6th and 7th inning pitchers from the time that Cody Allen became the closer of this team 5 years ago were homegrown in our minor league system?
I couldn't tell you.
Well, the guys you're mentioning, like C.C. Lee, would be one of them, I suppose. But, I mean, he wasn't successful.
No.
All right. Hagedorn was not successful, and he didn't even come. I think Hagedorn came from maybe the Red Sox. I mean, in a trade.
Yeah.
Where are the guys who throw 95 miles an hour who could become sick? And you're going to say Zach fucking McAllister. He's one. All right. Yeah. And he's terrible. Where is the developmental part of our organization? You know, people want to sit there and say, oh, this was a good trade or this was a bad trade. And we don't know that because we don't know what Francisco Mejia is going to become. As far as that goes, we don't know what Brad Hand is going to become either, or Symbol or any of these people. We don't know. But what we do know is that the reason the Cleveland Indians are forced to trade the number 5 overall prospect in Major League Baseball and the number 1 minor league prospect in their organization is because of their inability to create 6th and 7th inning gap relief pitchers. So much so that they end up paying a sweet dear price for somebody who literally has a 2-year history of success. Brad Hand, where do you think he came from? San Diego. But before that, the waiver wire. The Philadelphia Phillies waived him because he sucked.
Yep.
And he found himself in a no-pressure, never-win environment in San Diego. Is there, and look, his ERA this year is higher than it's been in the previous 2 years. The bottom line is, this is no guarantee, folks. This is not Mariano Rivera, and he's not even a closer. This guy is going to be a 7th inning pitcher. All right? That's what he's going to be. I mean, maybe initially because Andrew Miller's not ready to come back, maybe he'll be an 8th inning pitcher. But my point is that he's had 2 years of goodness in San Diego and nothing before that would indicate, and he's 28 years old. Okay? And he is controllable until 2021, right? So, and then the other guy they got is had a good rookie year, and he's a sidearm thrower. He doesn't get left-handed hitters out, but he gets hand hitters out. Allegedly, the Indians bought some hokum about now he can get left-handed hitters out, but I don't know any sidearm right-handed pitcher who's really all that effective, unless it was Dan fucking Quisenberry, and he's not Dan fucking Quisenberry. All right. Consequently, we got him corralled until 2023. And that seems to be the interest of the Indians because they know they're losing Cody Allen and they're going to lose Miller as well.
That's right.
These are the replacements. So we should have had apt replacements in our minor league system. When I see the Sean Greens and the Betances and the Yankees bullpen come in and I say, okay, where are our flamethrowers? You know who we were developing during all this time? Kyle fucking Crockett and Ryan fucking Merritt, 87 mile an hour
year old.
Yeah, might as well be 87 mile an hour pitchers. That's who they are. We got Tomlin, who's backed his way out of the starting rotation as far back in the bullpen as he can possibly go, who throws 84, 85 miles an hour. Where it's pretty bad when fucking Ogando, who's what was really perceived as very well washed up, comes up and he was the hardest thrower out of our bullpen.
It's amazing. Yeah. Okay, can I make your argument in another way? But
sure.
We'll essentially agree the same thing. Let's say there's 8 relievers on every team. So that means that there's 240 relievers, have a job in Major League Baseball. How many of those relievers actually are consistent enough to be worthwhile to be on a team closing or set-upping for more than 2 or 3 years? I would say at most 20 of them, so 10% of them. So we just traded into this pool of the shit 90% of relievers and gave away a prospect that could potentially be the first perennial all-star that the San Diego Padres have had since Tony fucking Gwynn. This is what we've done. And it's so much like the Giles Rincon and the Sean Casey for Dave Burba trade. It's just desperate. And your point about that management being shit and not developing thing has forced them into doing this desperate move. And they had to do it.
Well, here's the other thing. I mean, what it reminded me of... Go ahead, Brian.
Crazy Dog put in the chat room, Bradley Zimmer is having shoulder surgery.
That's right.
Oh, there you go. He's done. And I liked him. I was really high on Bradley Zimmer.
And we'll get to that in just a minute. But this is going to be kind of an indictment against these types of trades. All right. We traded Bartolo Colon when he was 29 years old to the Montreal Expos, and we got a haul in return. The lesser was being Lee Stevens, who was nothing. And then we got, the guy that the Indians really wanted was Grady Sizemore, Cliff Lee, who turned out to be really, really good. And then this guy named Brandon Phillips, who Eric Wedge hated because he was black. Okay. Which is plain and simple the truth, because they never gave him a fucking chance to play. The guy became a 3-time All-Star. We lost out on a really good player who had an inordinately long, healthy career, for Grady Sizemore, who was washed by the time he was 26, and for Cliff Lee, who ended up, of course, winning a Cy Young and then going for big money elsewhere. And the fucking funny part of it is that Lee's long gone, Sizemore's long gone, Brandon Phillips is gone, and Colon's still pitching. What the fuck?
And hitting.
Yeah. So I look at this and I say,
better than turning the calf too at the same time.
We have a history. Our history is we hold on to Russell Branyan.
Oh my God.
Okay, and now we've done it with Bradley Zimmer. Yeah. And Bradley Zimmer can't hit the ball, and I've already told people he was going to end up being the next size, where he plays the game in such a way that he rams into things, and he's very thin, and so he's done.
Yeah, you were right. I was wrong. I was pumping Zimmer.
Yeah, but I mean, you don't know what you're getting, and the Indians fall in love with certain things like Russell Branyan's Paul Bunyan-esque power, okay? Oh. They ignore the fact that he was barely hitting above the Mendoza line. They ignored that and all the strikeout percentage of 40% of his at-bats. They ignored that, and that he hit home runs. And, of course, he never had a solid...
Bring back Rob Deere and Jack Clark.
There were a whole series of guys, like Kingman was another one.
Hey, it's 188, but the hits he gets are home runs.
And you look at where Russell Branyan ended up going, which he went to the Reds, and then he went to the Tampa Bay Rays, and God damn it, he came back to Cleveland. Could you believe that? Once bitten, twice shy? No, not this organization. No. So we held on to Bradley Zimmer. All right. Now, what do I know about Mejia? He never got an opportunity to do anything, so I really can't tell you anything, but I can tell you this. The same excuses of being blocked at the major league level was the excuse they gave about Jesus Aguilar. Now, Jesus Aguilar hit 24 home runs at the All-Star break, and he hit 16 last year. And sometimes power hitters come into their own a little bit later in life. He's 28 years old. He never got a chance because of Carlos Santana. Now, Carlos Santana is not a good baseball player. I want people to fucking wake up and take a look at what he's doing in Philadelphia. He's hit 14 home runs at the break with a juiced up ball, and he's hitting no better than 210. Okay? This is who he is. It's who he's always been. And we kept him around forever because, well, he walks a lot. Well, he popped out and struck out more with men in scoring position than anybody I've ever seen in my life. But that didn't matter. Same thing with Kipnis. Should have been gone long ago. But this is, this is what we end up with doing. We hold on, we find these fixations, and then there's these other fixations that we have, and we'll find out about Mejia. I mean, he's going to a place where he should be up to the majors in no time flat, playing in an empty stadium in San Diego and doing his thing. And we should find out relatively quickly once he's up, how he performs at the major league level. But the bottom line is, if I would have said to you, well, God, we really need, and this would have been, when we're really fighting for the World Series, we have this guy in the minor leagues at AAA named Francisco Lindor. And God, do we need an extra starting pitcher? God almighty. We're going to have to part with him. I know that he's our top prospect, but ... You don't know who the next Jose Ramirez or the next You know, if Mejia turns out to be something good, we're just going to be holding our head saying, there's a guy who's going to have an easy 10-year career, and you would have teamed him up with the other two guys, and boy, you really could have had something. But in the end, it isn't the prognostication of what kind of player Mejia is going to be. It's that we perpetually put ourselves into desperate circumstances because we don't develop players at the minor league level.
That's right.
So that we have to trade what little we have that's down there in order to get what we look at as proven commodities. And, you know, I don't remember anyone talking about Brad Hand 3 years ago. Don't remember that. And we're going to do it again because Yandy Diaz is hitting 6th tonight. They brought him up just like they brought Mejia up. Here, we're going to give you a little look-see at him. He's going to get traded. And you know what's amazing about this is that we will trade young players for a 33-year-old Adam Jones. What do we need that for? Fucking Adam Jones is 33 years old, and he didn't even play center field anymore. We're going to throw him in right field. I don't want Adam Jones. He's 33. His bat's already slowing down. It's just, and we're going to mortgage, you know, and what's the dumbest part of it all is that we're in the worst division in baseball. We played like dog shit in the first half of the season. And we still have a 7.5 game lead. We had an 11.5 game lead over Minnesota until we fucked up before the All-Star break, and it's down to 7.5. But I mean, it's the worst. I mean, Chicago and Kansas City aren't even major league teams. If you take a look at all the teams that are playing against them, they're all having a fucking feast. They're terrible. The only reason we're doing what we're doing with our record is that we have to play them a lot because they're in our division. And they're terrible. But looking at it realistically, if we're in the worst division in baseball, and these teams, I mean, they said Minnesota was close, but Minnesota hasn't been good either. None of these teams should be barking, you know, up against our door, threatening us. We should be able to say, you know something? Now's a good time to bring up Mejia. Now's a good time to bring up some of these guys like Bieber. Now's a good time. And the reason is we're going to fucking win the division anyway. We might as well develop somebody rather than knowing what we have in a fat slug like Kipnis who can't perform. We got to find out what we got, and it's not going to hurt our chances of winning. This notion of, you know, and I saw Bruce Drennan the other day on television. He goes, well, this makes us viable for the next 2 years. Well, what's viable?
What?
You should automatically go into the fucking playoffs automatically just because the competition in the Central sucks.
He likes to trade? Drennan? Really?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I love it, Cleveland. I mean, and the thing that just amazes me is you don't have to do any of these things. We're in first place with fucking Neil Ramirez and Dan Otero pitching.
Yeah,
I mean, and this notion of, well, you know, how are we going to get by the Yankees? Get by the Yankees? Are you fucking kidding me? With what?
Subway tokens?
I just don't get it. It's like we're not in a position. I mean, the reason you can't beat the Yankees, I mean, even if we had great relief pitching, it doesn't matter. We found out in the playoffs. They'll just put a slick ball into the playoffs. Corey Kluber won't be able to grip it. They'll hit 6 home runs and win every time. We don't have a prayer. We don't have a prayer against that team because we can't score runs fast enough. And there's no way that we're going to shore up our hitting problems in this short a period of time with a dramatic measure. We're just struggling to get a 33-year-old center fielder. Or right fielder now. I mean, it's not like before that, if Lonnie Chisenhall's calves were suddenly healed, that guy's not going to help you. These are not.
Why are we still talking about Chisenhall? Can't we just?
I don't know.
Make it stop.
Because we didn't develop a corner infielder at third base. We had to move an all-star from second base to third base to accommodate. We didn't. We prayed to the baby Jesus that Brantley would get healthy and he's ready for free agency and he's going to leave. Now that he's proven himself, he's going to fetch
that was going to happen.
A pretty penny. But you see, we never developed corner outfielders. We never developed anybody out in right field. And we kept sticking with Lonnie Chisenfuck. And this is what we get. So I wish I could explain the logic of all of this, because if we're good enough to win the Central, and that's kind of a given, then why wouldn't we develop something? And, and it's amazing how long they went with Tomlin. They went with Tomlin forever and he got bombed, right? Did nothing. And now suddenly they bring Bieber up, and now we're at least in the fifth pitcher in the rotation is winning games. He's keeping us in games, and we're winning those games. We don't give anybody an opportunity, and Jesus Aguilar is a primary example. He did everything he was going to do at AAA, and you know what it reminds me of? Jesus Aguilar, when I first saw him, he reminded me of somebody.
Who?
Andre Thornton.
Oh, there you go.
He reminded me of a guy who may not be the greatest average hitter, although he's hitting for a good average this year, but that he had good power. And Andre didn't really amount to anything until he was 28 years of age. If you look at Andre Thornton, he was just a struggling minor league player. And he suddenly got an opportunity, and that's when he found himself. It happens with some players, just like with left-handed pitchers who sometimes mature a little later. It happens. We never gave the guy a chance. Do you know how much money we could have saved if we would have traded Carlos Santana for something that was good and moved Aguilar in, and he starts hitting home runs? We'd have lost nothing. We wouldn't have had to have spent the free agency money on Yonder Alonso, and we could have used that money for something else, which would have been another power stick or a relief pitcher. These mistakes that we make compound, and that's my criticism of the trade. It isn't that Brad Hand's going to be good or not good or whatever. That isn't it. It's that we allow ourselves constantly with our backs to the wall to be buyers because we can't develop, and we don't give people an opportunity. And
well, I got another theory. You're a businessman, Mo.
Yep.
And this is a businessman theory. When the Indians signed these first-round draft picks and second-round draft picks and throw all this like millions of dollars of money at them, they seem to fucking want to hang on to these fucks, because Chisenhall was drafted in the first round in 2008. Zimmer was, I think, drafted in the first round. How many of these guys that they draft high and give a bit of money to straight away that they're not that they have to feel they have to hang on to? That once that money goes out the door, these guys, that cost is gone. That's a sunk cost. It doesn't mean anything anymore because that money ain't there, and you can't do anything with it. It's not an asset.
Well, and it's that way in other sports too. Nobody wants to admit that Anthony Bennett was their first round pick. Nobody.
Exactly.
And so you end up holding on to these people way too fucking long. And Lonzo Ball will be the next one in LA. I mean, you make a mistake. I always said, you're better off when you realize that you made a mistake, parting ways with the mistake, than compounding it by continuing to force that mistake into games and costing you success. But the problem is these people have egos, man, and it's like they're not going to admit that they fucked up, not in a million years.
That's my next question. Is the problem is it their ego, or is that they're not quick enough to recognize their mistake? Either way, it's pretty fucking disturbing.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious when somebody just doesn't get it done. I mean,
you think it would be?
Well, it was like, I always go back to having Mark Shapiro on the program and just getting into an argument with him because he was just so bullheaded. He only saw the world through one fucking prism, and that was it. And there was absolutely no peripheral vision. And when you're dealing with people like that, it's like, you know, I dealt with owners of radio stations when I managed them who are like that. And it's like, if you know so fucking much, why did you have to hire a 28-year-old guy to run these for you? Why are you failing? I would ask them, why are you failing? If you have all these answers and you're lecturing me about what you are going to make me do, why did you bring me here? Makes no fucking sense. But you see, people in the end don't want to part with the authority. They don't want to part with, they don't want to acknowledge that they made a major blunder. I mean, do you think that the guy at the country club stands up and says, yep, I'm the guy who did the A-Rod deal? You know, do you think these people stand up and no. Say, I felt good about that one?
And Mr. Moohead, kind of to reinforce what you guys were talking about, I watched a video on Steven Jackson the other day where he talked about a lot of these franchises tend to hire people who never played the game before, and you have people making decisions for a particular sport that never even played it before. So do you think that could be a possibility?
No, I honestly think that people are locked in. And it's, with the Indians, it's a philosophy. And the philosophy is you can sell anybody to the Indians that they're going to have control over for a period of time. They like that control thing. That's why they kept Lindor down in the minors for so long. They love that control thing. And you know, I honestly believe that Mejia lost interest playing at AAA. I think that Lindor also, because Lindor was hitting exactly the same. He had been a 300 hitter, then all of a sudden he was loafing around 270 and not really performing at AAA. And I think he was just distraught that he was stuck on the bus still when there was clearly nobody better than him at shortstop playing with the Indians. And
they've done this before too with like Victor Martinez. Even that's another example. They've had these young Latino guys that they've just like fucking bulldozed.
And Yandy Diaz doesn't have power, and he may not be the answer to anything. But again, when you're in a situation where you stay with Kipnis, and anyone can see that it's a precipitous slide from this.
Oh, it's like Carlos Baerga all over again.
I mean, it's not like this is, Johnny Peralta-esque. I mean, it's like a fucking nosedive, and we don't need that. And you got to give a guy an opportunity. And this is the first year that Yandy Diaz hasn't been able to hit 300 in the minor leagues. He's probably tormented over the fact that he's still stuck on the bus at AAA. And, that has something to do with it. And they're calling him up only for a look-see because that they have to add they got to add Bieber back into the mix. And so somebody on the roster has to go. And they brought up both Melky Cabrera and Yandy Diaz. And let me tell you, it ain't Melky Cabrera, 38 years old, who's going to be sent back down to the minors. Fuck no. Oh, no.
So Mr. Moohead, do you think the lack of competition in your division forces these to stay complacent?
No, I think that it should be a given that we're going to win. I think that it isn't complacency. It's that they're a badly run organization. They don't structure anything in their minor leagues to create players who can help them at the big league level where we need the help. Nobody analyzes the organization and says, God, we're really, we're one step away from disaster in the bullpen, and we don't have a power arm. I mean, if Cody Allen went down, God forbid, what would we do? We wouldn't be able to close the game. Nobody seems to be anticipating the leaks before they're sprung. And you can't run a business that way. You've got to have a plan, and that plan is this guy goes down. I mean, if the Yankees is a good example. If Aroldis Chapman goes down, all right, Betances can just – you can just put him right in, and you can move Robertson right up to the 8th inning. Because and he was a closer for all those years in Chicago. All you have to do is kind of move guys up. We don't have that option because we haven't anticipated the problem. And Andrew Miller's already gone down, and God only knows if something happened to Cody Allen, you feel a pop in your arm or whatever the hell happens, you're not prepared to do anything about this. So now they're saying, oh, look what we did. You see, we covered the leak because we got Brad Hand and this other guy from the San Diego Padres. It's like, but it's what we used to call a zero-sum gain because you're going to lose Miller and Cody Allen.
Yeah.
So to free agency. So, I mean, what the fuck? You're not gaining anything here.
Yep.
That's a good point.
I'm just, I want to see the organization get stronger from top to bottom. I want to see a guy that we can bring in the 6th, 7th inning who has real closer potential, but just is young, is inexperienced, needs work on his mechanics, has the stuff, maybe not the control. We've seen guys like this before. In my years of watching the Cleveland Indians, I watched Eric Plunk all over the fucking place, all right?
Paul Shuey.
I'm sorry?
Paul Shuey.
Paul Shuey was another great example. Couldn't control the ball over the plate, but had this remarkable stuff. He had a split finger pitch from hell. But
I think he's the fastest guy I've ever seen pitch, I think, live in person.
That leg kick when he first came up was just crazy bad. And, but they got it ironed out. And, boy, he became an effective relief pitcher. There are examples, but you got to have the arm talent. These guys that we have, we seem to be settling on guys who are like, well, he's really kind of brainy, and he overachieves and he's gutsy. I want arm talent, God damn it. That's like the quarterback thing with Cleveland. Charlie Fry's pretty smart. I want arm talent. I want somebody who can throw the ball in the necessary places that needs to be fit in. I don't want to see a guy with a noodle arm.
Yeah.
But we're getting way too much of that in Cleveland because we're not developing. So that's really the bottom line of my problem.
Didn't Eric Plunk end his career in Milwaukee? I think I remember him. He played his last 2 years in Milwaukee with the Brewers. Eric Plunk.
Yeah, I don't even, all I know is that Plunk came up to the Indians. He couldn't throw a strike to save his soul. And then they
I think he got drafted by Oakland, didn't he, in 86?
Yeah, what I know about him is that they got him settled down and but he had arm talent, who was the other guy? Now it escapes me now. I mean, I've seen guys come up with the Indians who could throw real hard and it was, it's like McAllister can throw 95, 96, but he has never added a secondary pitch. That's why he should have been gone a long time ago. What you have is arm talent, and if you can teach Anil Ramirez how to control his slider, he becomes a much more effective pitcher. If he has to live with his fastball, which is 95, 96, they can wait on that and crush him. But with that ball that has depth, that breaking slider, it gives him legs, man, to get people out, to get strikeouts and swings and misses. That's the stuff of relief pitching is ratios of swings and misses because these guys come in with men in scoring position and you're trying to get a guy who can strike people out. Yeah, I mean, and that's not Ryan fucking Merritt. That's not people throwing 87 miles an hour playing slow pitch. You might as well set it up at a tee against those guys. You need guys who have arm talent. And we're not developing it. So I'll move on because there are a few other subjects that I wanted to approach without pissing. Oh, is it Simber? That's his name, Simber. What did I say? Symbol? Simber. Okay. Well, we'll see. Well, maybe we'll all forget him after we see him. I really don't know anything about him. I haven't even looked at his record, except I know he had a 2.87 earned run average, and this is his rookie year. I don't know what he looked like in the minor leagues. Couple of things. What could be worse than watching the press carry on about, the Lakers, it's a 3-year process. And it's like, when did anybody give the Cavaliers a 3-year process? When LeBron came back, they got to win now! They got to win now! No. When was there any sympathy from the goddamn media about a 3-year plan for the Cleveland Cavaliers? When? The answer is never.
Nope.
We were on alert from the minute LeBron came of two things. One, got to win now. And two, he's leaving soon. Those were the two things that we were made aware of. No,
So,
I'm being serious. It was like, I'm coming home. I'm coming home. And we're all, LeBron's coming home. LeBron's coming home. And ESPN is, so how long do you think he stays before he leaves? It's like, fuck me in the ass, why don't you? Just fuck me in the ass. I mean, this is ridiculous. And now all of a sudden, it's like Magic Johnson, and flatulence is not part of HIV, but when he farts, it's Beethoven. It's like they just signed Michael Beasley in a 1-year deal. Oh, that's great! Michael Beasley! Yeah. Lance Stevenson. Oh, God, what a great sign. Rajon Rondo. Oh, my God, he's awesome.
It's like they're trying to compare them to, like, on side by side to LeBron as if he's going to bring their true talents out. I don't know. That's the only thing I'm guessing from it,
Well, no, I mean, what they're saying about Rondo is really, it's just absolutely hilarious. It's like, well, Rondo's an elder statesman, and he'll be able to groom Lonzo Ball. It's like, oh, yeah, right. Yeah, he did a real great job for Ben McLemore in Sacramento. Fuck you. Rajon Rondo cares about nobody but himself. That's why
it's always been that way.
Oh, my God, the Celtics were none too pleased to get rid of him.
Yeah.
He was a pain in the ass. And that's when he could play. I mean, now, it's like he's going to get out there and he's going to say, I can pass as good as Lonzo and I can shoot as bad as Lonzo. So I'm right here. I should be playing. You see, all of this now is just going to be, well, what great deals, But it doesn't really matter, you see. What I found out today on First Take on ESPN, what I found out was it doesn't really matter, because Magic's not afraid of Golden State because he's got time.
Yep.
He's got time. And, they have time. They can set up and find out who they want to keep this year. And even if they don't win, it's not that big a deal because you're going to get the second superstar next year, and the guys who don't perform will be gone, and they'll trade them to unfortunate teams, and they'll get other players. And in 2 to 3 years, they'll be right there. And this has got nothing to do with we got to beat the Warriors, we got to win a title. It has nothing to do with that. You know what it has to do with?
What?
We've got to resuscitate the Los Angeles basketball market for the league. That's what it is. 100 fucking percent. And if we're setting up the Lakers to be a really good basketball team for the next 10 years, that's the way the NBA wants it.
Yeah.
It does not make any difference whether they win right now or not.
I've said this since day one.
Fossilized assholes back on TV.
Wait, one at a time. Brian first.
I said, and to put the fossilized assholes of Hollywood back on TV.
Well, it's a high-profile city, and that's what they need. And it's been so bad there for so long now that it's like, and you can't keep talking about Kobe and Shaq. You can't keep talking about that. You got to have something new to talk about. So this is what we have. And it really isn't very good. This team isn't that good. And you know something? LeBron James going to get a rocking chair. LeBron James is where his business interests are, where his son can go to a good high school and become a groomed basketball player. And he can get his 26 a night and he can put on a show for the people in LA. But you know something? When the Lakers said, it's a 3-year plan, LeBron's going to be 37. And you know something? Good for him! Good for him! Take the money and run. $153 million. Spend it out your ass. The fact of the matter is, it's all scripted. This is all to make that city viable again within the league. And there is no pressure on them. Other teams like Cleveland have to win now. Look at the Toronto Raptors. It's sad. It's sad. Toronto's a great town. I used to visit Toronto all the fucking time. Really a wonderful town. But you know something? They started losing in the playoffs, and they had to do something. They had to do something. So the goddamn general manager says to DeMar DeRozan in the summer league, just recently, here's what we have to do together to make this thing better. A week later, he's fucking traded. I mean, what a fucking asshole that is. And then you bring in Kawhi Leonard, and Kawhi Leonard says, I don't want to play in Toronto. and I'm not going to stay in Toronto. And you can't make me neener. I'm going to, I love LA. So that Magic Johnson's sitting there saying, yeah, you see, that's how it works. You know, we'll slowly but surely get better. It's part of the 3-year plan. And meanwhile, what happens to Toronto? They just gave away DeMar DeRozan for a 1-year rental, and then they go in a total rebuild. And they, because the league doesn't give a shit about Toronto. They don't give a shit about Cleveland. They don't give a shit about any of these cities because they're not marketing cities for the league. That's all that matters to them.
Preach.
No, I mean, it's the truth. I mean, that's what they, that's the market that they want. And New York is going to be next. I don't know how they're going to do that. I was hoping, and at this point, while I'm talking about the NBA, I was right again about Michael Porter Jr. Oh, what a wild guess. Hoo-ah. We'll do a little bit of Al Pacino. Like, that was not a predictable outcome. Yeah. Second back surgery. I told you it would happen. Did I think it was going to happen this quick? It's possible. And you want to know what the beautiful part of it is? They're lying to you again. I'm going to come out and tell you the truth again, and you won't fucking believe me. The only thing I'm sorry about is that the Knicks didn't go ahead and draft Porter Jr. That would have set the organization back 5 more years. Fuck New York. Yeah. Fuck that city. Filthy piece of shit. Fuck it. Just talked about way too fucking much. Too fucking much.
If Toronto was smart, they should have kept DeRozan that had 3 years left on his deal, and they could have lured in a possible free agent like Kyrie Irving to go over there and go play with them, or maybe get in Carmelo on a 1-year rental or just something. It would be better than what they're doing now.
Well, I mean, no, it's suicide now because they've got nothing and they've given away a guy and they've gotten basically a 1-year rental and that's it because nobody gives a shit about the city. But again, the league only cares about what it cares about, and anything that gets in its way, it doesn't really matter in the end. Toronto's headed for a rebuild. Cleveland is headed for a rebuild. And, and nobody really gives a shit. You know what's amazing? You have a guy like Giannis, who's this great young player, but nobody talks about Milwaukee because it's the home of Laverne and Shirley. Folks, they give you a tour of the Schatz Beer Factory. The league doesn't give a shit about Milwaukee.
Preach.
I mean, that's why you don't hear anything about them. I mean, don't you think that a guy like Giannis, who is a freak, that's what they call him, he's the freak, that they would have by this time been able to get players to help him? The team's getting worse. The team's getting fucking worse. How can that be that they have a legitimate superstar and the team is getting worse? And the answer is it's not part of the league script. Nobody cares about that city either. Fuck them.
Did y'all guys see that ridiculous trade yesterday with Melo? It said like breaking news, Melo traded the Hawks, but then when you go and read it, they're like, the Hawks took his contract, released him, gave up Schroeder and gave up Muscala, who is argumentatively their 2 best players on the team. Granted, Schroeder wanted to be traded because he was supposedly a cancer in the locker room. So what Atlanta did was they catered to the short midget's request, traded their 2 best players away, got nothing in return except for a 2022 protected first-round draft pick they can't use for 4 years, plus Justin Anderson, who I don't see any greatness coming in return. So you screwed your whole franchise up because one little midget wanted to get traded. And the NBA allowed it because Atlanta is not a marketable franchise. Like,
nobody cares. I mean, now you know why Budenholzer always looked like he was crying. I mean, for God's sake. Yeah, I mean, it's like you have your chance, all right? Back when they had Teague and they had that group of people, right? They had that group, and it failed. All right, and, it's funny they talk about the one and done in college basketball. This is the real one and done, folks. You got one chance. at the brass ring. And if you don't get it done, man, you're gone. Your franchise is eviscerated.
Well, look at the Magic since Penny Hardaway left the team.
Little Penny.
I just sit through that asshole in Phoenix.
I mean, franchises just disappear. And it's amazing because even when an organization, like Milwaukee, like I said, I mean, it's incredible. They have this great player and there's just no interest in building that franchise. There seem to be what happens is, and I think Philadelphia will be the next team like this, is they'll get to a point where there's X good enough, and that's good enough for the league, and it's a hell of a lot better than what it was in Philadelphia. And the process is a dead end. It will be a lot like Oklahoma City, who loses.
They'll be in the same position that they were with Barkley from 86 to
right. They'll be good, and they'll get into the playoffs, and that'll placate the people in Philadelphia. And it's going to be like that in Indiana. And I mean, what the fuck? Indiana is still looking for the end of days. I mean, they've got a Bible shoved halfway up their ass. These people here don't even expect that they'll even be alive for the next basketball season, let alone see a championship. And so getting Victor Oladipo and getting that team, that's good enough for Indiana. If they're going to make playoffs, that's good enough for them, And if a team like Detroit can slide in, that's good enough for them. Or if Miami can slide back in because Spoelstra, because he has all this intelligence and the moles on his face, whatever the situation is, that's good enough for Miami. And that's the way the league looks at things. It's like, and then those teams will eventually fade away and become bargain basement teams, like has happened to Cleveland now and will happen to Toronto. And they'll just become the new horrible teams. And then Brooklyn, I really question that whole organization, but they will next year, by the way, have the ability to bring in 2 max contracts next year, just so that you're keeping track. Wow. Now, that doesn't mean that anybody wants to go there necessarily, but that is one New York team. And if the Knicks, if it's not the Knicks because Dolan doesn't sell the team, then it will be the Brooklyn Nets, who they'll try to revive New York, like they tried to revive Los Angeles with the Clippers by bringing in a billionaire owner, deep pockets, right?
Yeah.
So, but they never cared about the Clippers either. Not really. I mean, it's the Lakers they wanted. That's the Showtime organization. So, that's what's happening here. And it's just so bogus,
Yep. I had some of my subscribers tell me, they're like, the Lakers in Boston, they're trying to make them a Trump term great again. And they're like, now New York's going to be next because they're another big market franchise. And maybe Chicago, they'll try to revive them, make them similar to 96 Bulls or something.
Yeah. I mean,
the league could actually contract by like 8 teams and actually be better.
Yep. Here goes the rest of us. We'll all be sitting here like this. It's time for the NBA draft in 2025, and we're all sitting here like this. In the first pick, the Cleveland Cavaliers select Howard Dumbo from Clown University. And he's like, dun, 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 dun. And we're all just sitting here like, oh, God, here goes another 10-win season again.
Well, I'll tell you. The NBA, is a waste of time. And, the thing is that the only real interest, and it was interesting because I think a lot of this has to do with millennials. I really do, because the younger fans are really more interested in the social media aspects. They're more interested in the players than they are the teams.
Yeah.
Popularity of the sport is more ruled by television ratings and the big name players and the endorsements that go with those players, the Uncle Drew movies and all that, than it is with any notion of having any kind of parity within the league. And there are with the internet and all, there's really no hometown favoritism amongst the fans. Everyone came on board when LeBron came back to Cleveland, and now a lot of them have just gone to Los Angeles to cheer them on. And this is what the NBA is marketing to, and it's too bad because it's
which goes back to what I was saying months ago, is that they need a hard cap, so all this shit comes to an end. But I don't know if it's going to mess with their money, if it's going to mess with their bottom line if they do that.
The league's making money. I mean, the bottom line is it's a business, and the league's doing well. The television ratings are good, and they're making a lot of money, and they're happy with it.
But it's from an entertainment standpoint, it's not fun, you know.
Well, especially it's not fun if you live in 25 of the cities.
I mean, not only like before the season even starts, we already know Golden State's going to win. So like, what's even the point of playing the season? Why don't you just go straight to the finals and just draw a name from the hat from the East and see which one pops out?
I think it's all about establishing names. I think if you have a Donovan Mitchell and you start, milking that name and getting it out in the public. And so we're trying to create a series of stars, and that's enough to motivate the fans who are watching that sport. And I think that's just the way the business works. And there is no pressure on the NBA to make this a parity league or to make this a competitive league. It's more, you tell me. I mean, there's no real backlash against the Warriors. There's no backlash against any of these teams who have become super teams. None.
Yep.
So there's no downside if you are in a big market to play that kind of game. There's no problem with it.
So, Mr. Moohead, do you see in 2021, do you see the next collective bargaining agreement is then, do you see them raising the cap to where the luxury tax, or do you see them creating some sort of hard cap, or do you see them tweaking that? Or
there's no way they're going to a hard cap. I mean, there are owners who are willing to pay the luxury tax, and basically it's welfare. It gets redistributed around the league. And, the fact of the matter is that losing is obviously not that painful to organizations like the Sacramento Kings. They just learn to accept that's their lot in life. And if they can get a little bit of winnings from the bigger picture, so be it. And we just keep on cheering teams to spend more money so that more money gets floated around the rest of the league. This is kind of the way it works. And the league is happy to have that overage as well. But the teams, the cities themselves, and the organizations have accepted the fact that they're not going to be very good. Just the way that it is. And no, I don't think that it's really all that fan-friendly for my generation. My generation doesn't matter. It's the upcoming generation, and they like it the way it is. They're happy with it.
But I mean, out of every sport, though, NBA is like the worst sport in terms of parity. Like if you go to any other sport, sometimes you'll have 8 or 9 teams in the mix. Even in baseball, you got 15 teams, 16 teams still in the mix right now. I mean, I know they have a larger season, but it draws more interest at this time of the year. But for basketball, it's like 10 games in the season. It's like, okay, he's the number 1 seed, he's the number 2 seed, 3 seed, 4 seed. You fill out your form with those same teams, and I guarantee you 7 out of 8 of those will stay the same.
Yeah, well, it's not. Well, how is it different than college football? You look at the college football, the preseason polls, it's been the same 8 teams at the top for like 10 years in a row.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you look at it, it's not just the NBA. It's fucking amateur sports. It's fucking college sports.
Yeah, true.
I mean, it's just the way everything has become, and everything's static and status quo, and we don't care about this shit anymore. The worst part of it is we don't care about anything anyway. It's like they just did a poll. 28% of millennials say they're going to vote in the 2018 midterm elections. 28%. You know something? Fuck them. Fuck them. You know, the bottom line is that when you stop giving a shit, that's when the hands are all in the till. Here's a headline from Cleveland.com. Did the Cavaliers fail by winning only 1 title in 11 years of LeBron James? Well, I have a better question. Is it possible that the person who wrote that headline and wrote this particular article could be dead of cancer next year? What kind of, that's the nostalgic view from the lake. It's like, we failed 10 out of the 11 years. That would be exactly what these self-loathing Northeast Ohio press people would write. God only knows. I want my teams to get better. I want the Indians to get better. I don't want them to trade away all their young players to do it. But this is they forced themselves so that they had to make the trade, so they made the trade. That's it. That's what it is. It's no more. It's no less. So
who do you see coming out of the East? Is it Boston? Does anybody else have an objection to that?
No, an objection. I mean, they were handed it when they were handed Gordon Hayward, whom they didn't know was going to wreck his leg, and Kyrie Irving. But the only thing that's going to keep, it's like who shot JR. The only thing that, during rerun season, that's how they kept Dallas as a popular show, because everybody was waiting to find out.
That should be our new pastime. Shooting J.R. Smith. Yes.
Oh, wrong JR. But yeah, you bring up a good point. I want him to go to Los Angeles so he can team with Michael Beasley and drive LeBron absolutely crazy. That would be my choice. But, this is how they kept interest in television programs during rerun season. This is what the NBA is too. It's, is Kyrie going to re-sign with the Celtics? That'll all start too. Is he going to go to New York? And that's what the speculative press and the speculative.
Some of them have already started that. Why Kyrie shouldn't re-sign with the Celtics?
That's right. Look, this is the same press that we're dealing with on our political front. Well, our country, it goes down the shitter. This is the speculative press, and that seems to be the way to keep people fascinated, interested, and involved. Is by writing these articles that are pure guesswork, that have absolutely no basis at all in fact. It's just, rumor, innuendo. That seems to be all there is. And the league fuels itself, and the NBA is perfect because that's how they use their offseason, is with all this free agency bullshit. And that's how they keep interest in the league when they're not playing the game. So the way football does it is with the combine, with the draft, with a preseason that nobody wants to play, that injures people and shortens people's lives. That's the way they do it. At Major League Baseball, they don't really have to worry about it because the season goes fucking on forever anyway, and by the end of it, everyone's sick of it.
Seems like a double-bladed sword no matter what sport you enter.
It's just the way it is, man. It's just the way it is.
It's just one big giant guillotine.
How so?
We're just all waiting to get our heads cut off.
Do you think millennials kind of screwed up the NBA in terms of I know the NBA is marketing towards the millennials, sort of like individually pursuing players as opposed to, the team from a team base. Do you think millennials, in fact, kind of share a bit of that responsibility, a bit of that blame?
No, I just think that it's the way the country is evolving. No more than, if you really want me to be honest about Donald Trump, putting my personal feelings about the man aside and just looking at him as a political animal and not looking at him as a businessman before he was a political animal, I would say that he's played it like a virtuoso. He said the things that people wanted to hear, and he chose a time when people were willing to hear words spoken that were cutting, that were angry, that were belittling, and thrived on them. We found a point in time where we like to vilify certain things and certain people. It worked. And that's what politics, and I've always said about politics, it's the reason I'm not involved in politics, it's all about winning. When Bill Clinton won the presidency, what people would say to me is, well, are you happy now? And I said, no, it's not that I'm happy. It's that he won. He did what he went up and made a fool of himself playing a saxophone on a late night television program and tried to humanize himself and do this and do that. And he won. That's what the name of the game is. And all the NBA is doing is marketing to the group of people, and that's what they like. That's all Vince McMahon is doing in the WWE. He's just marketing to people and the changing current of the way that people feel. And that's what Donald Trump has tapped into. And give him credit for that. When he says, I am a stable genius, I just, kind of, you say, wow, who says that? But I'll tell you one thing. He certainly has his finger on the pulse of what drives those people who still vote to the polls. He has his finger on that pulse, and the league has its finger on that pulse.
Sounds like we're watching an episode of NBA Housewives.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is where we are right now, and it's like the NFL, and this whole anthem thing is not an issue, should never have been an issue, has nothing to do with football, has nothing to do with anything. And the fact of the matter is they've made it into a bigger thing that it should have been, and now nobody can back their way out of it. And look, the bottom line is this: let them kneel and let them play. Look, if you're going to let them get brain damage, let them kneel. And you know something? The players aren't going to do anything else except kneel, and it will be forgotten. So help me, the one thing that I've learned, and I'm going to tell you a story that is not a very flattering story, and it's not a very flattering story about the NAACP. The NAACP, National Association for the Advancement of, colored people. We don't call them that anymore, but God forbid we would. We get shot. But that organization, when they would start up with radio stations because of inadequate minority hiring, first of all, I never had the problem, but there are a lot of people in the country who were taken to task, especially in major metropolitan markets where minority populations were higher. But one of the things that people found out very quickly is if you responded to them, you were in trouble. But if you ignored them, they went away, because there would always be somebody who'd get into a fight with them and they draw all their attention to the people who were fighting and arguing. And if you just left them alone, they'd forget about you. And that's how I feel about the anthem thing. It's like, let them kneel. Let them kneel. It's, let it go. It's not a big deal, because when no one talks about it anymore and it just becomes not shown on television, if they don't point the cameras at the guys doing this during the national anthem and drawing the attention to it, they'll stop doing it. Because
it's peaceful
publicity. It's not for any great love of caring, or, if they really cared about this issue during this offseason, we'd be hearing about 500 football players who are really doing something about this. But no, we haven't heard shit. We haven't heard shit. And that's because the games aren't being played. They go away.
Make them walk through, if they care so goddamn much, make them walk through goddamn Southwest Chicago with no bodyguards, no NFL protection, no bullshit.
Well, I feel the same way about the owners. I think the owners should shut the fuck up about politics. Shut the fuck up. If we don't have to hear this nonsense, we don't equate it to our sports, and it goes away. It loses the interest. But you see, even the NFL can't get out of the way of this social media thing. And now the game's not being played, but we're going to resurrect the anthem issue. And it's like, it's a big fucking mistake, because it's a turn off and it makes me totally disinterested in the whole thing. Has nothing to do with the game whatsoever. But if the owners were smart, if they have a pro-patriotic view of life and they have a Republican view of life, God bless them. They're free to believe what they want to believe. They'd be smart if they just ignored the players and let them do their silly little thing, and then they would be forgotten when
and it also gets perpetuated by the bobbleheads.
Who are the bobbleheads?
Shannon Sharp and
the
other asshole. All of those bobbleheads that are on the 24-hour news cycle.
Yeah, but the media
and FS1 and
the only reason they're talking about it is they can generate ratings, Brian. That's all they care about. I come from that industry. It's all about ratings. You say the most ridiculous things that you can say, and that's how you get ratings. It's how big is Kim Kardashian's ass? It's ratings.
Is this the NFL's way of trying to compete with the NBA, like the LeVar deal? They're like, we're going to do the national anthem deal. So this kind of goes hand in hand.
Seems to have been resurrected again somehow, and the thing is all it took is one guy saying, well, I'm just going to kneel, and it blows up all over again. The NFL's like, hey, they're talking about us. Hey, not even August, and they're talking about us. Get a load out of that,
And then some asshole will bring up Kaepernick again. Why isn't Kaepernick in the league? Because he sucks.
It's so far gone.
The fuck hard. He sucks, and he's fucking a goddamn communist. You're done. Goodbye. Get out of my country.
but he's forgotten. I mean, and it's like, just like everything would be forgotten if they just shut the fuck up and play the game. And Shannon Sharp or whoever, or, you know, Skip Bayless or whoever would stop talking about it if it just wasn't shown on television. And nobody knew which players did and which players didn't. It wouldn't be an issue. It wouldn't be a ticking time bomb anymore. And nobody would give a fuck. And there would be no ratings in it. So they'd have to find something else to talk about. And what they would talk about is, Kawhi Leonard's going to fuck Toronto and go to Los Angeles. They'll always find something to talk about, but geez, let's play the football games and let's not focus on this silly shit. It's foolishness.
I agree. Ever since NFL brought politics into their game, it's made it so less interesting. But the fact is, you're catering to the Kim Kardashian fans of the marketing, you know, in terms of the fan base there, and they like that kind of stuff. But guys like me, I just want to watch football on Sundays. I don't care about the politics of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, David Gregory saying the players should not even be out there. I mean, you know, and again, this kind of rhetoric only furthers the cause of, you know, why, you know, what we should be talking about is the games. We shouldn't be talking about this foolishness. I mean,
well, one of my subscribers told me just let them kneel and whatever happens to them happens. Meaning, if they lose endorsements or like Brandon Marshall did on the Broncos or whatever happens to them happens. Like, that's the risk you take. You know, like, it's your freedom of speech to kneel, but then it's everybody's freedom of speech of how they respond to that financially, right? So,
no, I mean, but again, if nobody talked about it, the players wouldn't get the satisfaction out of this. No. And somebody has to be smart enough at the ownership level to have been able to figure this out, but nobody has. So,
but Mr. Moohead, if their bottom line is being affected, if the ratings are going down since the kneeling and everything, and fans are not coming, don't you think it is kind of the NFL's responsibility to have some sort of policy in place to say, like, okay, hey, look, we're losing a lot of money out of this. We need to do something.
But, you know, the NFL hasn't even gotten a cogent policy about people who punch women or people who beat up people and people who are assault or people who are criminals. Or, I mean, the NFL hasn't been very good at imposing policy on any level, let alone free speech issues. I don't want the NFL legislating free speech issues. Just let it die. Let it go away. I would like to see the NFL put its foot down against the Jameis Winstons of the world and the people who are repeat offenders of crimes. I would like to see the NFL put its foot down in those regards. Abusive patterns of behavior, violent off the field issues. Those are the types of things. And we get 1 game or 2 game or 3 game suspensions. I'd like them to be looking into that a lot harder than the marijuana issue. I think, you know, the violence issue is a much bigger problem for them. But no, I mean, legislating things, you know, let's be honest about it. I don't want the league intervening. And the owners are a bunch of dicks. Let me tell you that. They're a bunch of fucking dicks. I don't want them legislating free speech issues either. Just ignore it. Just ignore it. I mean, you know, I'm Jewish. Now, I'm not a practicing Jew, but I had to sit there on television many decades ago and watch neo-Nazis choose Skokie, Illinois, which is a Jewish suburb outside of Chicago, to do their Holocaust denial walk. All right. They chose the most inflammatory place that they could have gone to deliver that message. And people said to me, how could you tolerate that? And it's like, you ignore it because there's not that many of those people, and they want the attention. They're looking for the headlines. They're no different than those crazy people from the Westboro Baptist Church. They show up at people's funerals and make these horrible God hates faggots kind of comments and all of that. Those people are just looking for headlines. And when you ignore them, you don't hear about them anymore. Where's the Westboro Baptist Church? You don't hear about it anymore because it's not worthy of being spoken about. And there are some things that are like that. We made the mistake with the goddamn war statues here in the South. We made that mistake, you know, and we played that whole thing up and it got all blown out. What do you hear about it now? You hear about nothing. And it's all just news cycle. And you ignore these things, and quite honestly, there's not enough momentum to keep these people going. The
Mr. Should Jameis Winston be kicked out of the league? I know you brought his name up. Do you think you said repeat offenders? I heard you mention something about that.
I think he should have been suspended for the season, and then the next one gone for good. Yep. He shouldn't even have been in the league in the first place because of the whole college thing. That whole thing was just swept under the rug. The guy has been pampered, and it's wrong. And privilege, whether it's Bill Cosby, if it's a black man privilege, or if it's a white man privilege, where wealthy people are able to escape justice, I'm against it. And it doesn't matter what color they are. And the fact of the matter is, how many chances has Jameis Winston got, and he still managed to fuck it up? Yeah, you take this away from him, and you take his pay away from him for the fucking year too. You say, God damn it, this is the way it's going to work. And let them go to court if they want to go to court about it. But the fact is, no pay, 1 season. You either come back a better citizen, and if you do it again, you're out of the league for good. You can play in fucking Canada with Johnny Manziel on the bench. You can sit with him. Got no tolerance for this. But, those are the things that should be legislated. That's what the league should be concerned about, not a bunch of guys kneeling on the sidelines. It's just not important.
You're right. There's more important issues.
My God. And the kneeling thing will go away, but these goddamn violence issues are not going to go away because it's unfortunately become a part of the culture of the goddamn game. It's what college players are allowed to do because their colleges don't want to pay them, but God damn it, they'll let them commit crimes on campus. God only knows, to keep that income revenue coming in. Pathetic.
Well, and that's shit that comes out in high schools too.
Oh yeah, it's all part
Some
of the
machine. Worst fucking shit that happened at my high school was football and baseball players.
Yeah, well, I mean, I remember when Willie Spencer played for Massillon High School, and the Massillon-McKinley game was the biggest at the time, the biggest high school football game in the country. All right. And Willie Spencer was the star running back for the Massillon Tigers. They bailed him out of jail to play in the game.
Wow.
This was back in the 70s, folks. Back in the 70s when I lived in Canton. Oh, yeah. You bet. I mean, this has been going on for time immemorial. People evading justice based on, a fan base, the Booster Club. It's been going on for ages.
You're right. I had a buddy of mine who got expelled. He was a freshman quarterback at Marshall, and he got expelled. And they were actually still picking him up and taking him to practice. And then come to find out, coaches were able to talk the principal to getting him back into school because he was a star quarterback.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
I was so shocked to see that.
Oh, I'm not shocked anymore to hear anything. I got to get out of here. It's 7:18, and this has been a great show, a great opportunity to talk about a wide range of things. Bronk, thank you. Ryan, thank you. And Steven, thank you. And back on Monday, okay?
Okay.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot. And thanks, everybody, for tuning into this edition of Moohead Radio. I'm going to get this up on the archive as soon as I can. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good weekend. Go Tribe this weekend. Let's hope Yandy Diaz gets some hits so that he'll end up
get traded to a nice team.
Yeah, where he can play every day. Hasta la vista, Pastor Eds. Good night.
Boo.
Boo.